Hi, everyone. This is Michael Quentz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, and today is a special broadcast of Brownsville Matters. We're very fortunate to have every walk of life from South Texas, especially Brownsville, come visit us and tell us their stories. And today's special guest is Oscar Casares, who's here to tell us about a very unique event that he's presenting in our community. Well, welcome, Oscar. Welcome back, I should say.
Yeah.
And we've been discussing some of the good eats here in town, and we also happen to have some good arts here in town. You're going to present something April 2nd in the TSC Performing Arts Center. Can you tell us what that special event is all about?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's a project that's been, oh goodness, a good 5-6 years in the making, at least. It started off back in 2019. I took a trip down here with a photographer friend of mine to take some images for my website. And so I just wanted to take some photos in my old neighborhood and around town. And so we did that. And the images were beautiful. And we got back to Austin. And my editor at Texas Monthly contacted me and said, do you have a project about the border that we can maybe run in the magazine? And I said, I don't have an idea for you, but I do have these images. And he said, well, what could we do with the images? And I said, well, give me a day or two. And I thought about it, and I said, well, this was such a great experience coming down and just trying to document life, specifically in Brownsville. What if we did the entire border, the entire Texas-Mexico border? And so we designed this epic road trip where we flew out to El Paso. Joel Salcido, the photographer, happened to be from El Paso. I'm from Brownsville, so there was a nice symmetry to that. So we started off in his hometown, and we crossed over into Juarez, and then we made our way down to Presidio and Ojinaga, and along the way we just crisscrossed the border. Now, part of the idea in making this trip was that there was a point where my 10-year-old daughter said to me, as kids will often just blurt out, she said, you know what? You're just obsessed with the border. That's all you'll talk about. And there was some truth to that. I talk about it a lot at the dinner table. I obviously write a lot about it. I've written 3 books. I've written many essays. So she was
right.
She was right. Yeah, I had to admit she was right. But I also had to look at why that was, why that might be, and what I understood, which is fairly accurate, is that I had this just burning desire to tell my 2 kids, the story of the border, principally because I felt like the national media was not doing a very good job. In fact, they were telling a very negative
Tends
version
to be
of.
distorted because of the distance physically and the distance of understanding the life.
Exactly. If they come down here, it's usually for some crisis, tragedy of some sort. And that really, doesn't paint an accurate picture at all of the border region. And so this obsession, I came to understand, was part of that, right? It was addressing those misconceptions of the border. So, the idea was we'll travel the entire length of the border, we'll crisscross over into Mexico, and the photographer will take these beautiful images just as he had taken down here in Brownsville, and I'll write these postcards to my daughter Elena, right? And I'll just give her these little snapshots of life in a very intimate way, and hopefully begin to open her mind to what this experience is of living on the border. I mean, my family's lived here since the mid 1800s, so and I still have a ton of family that lives in the Upper Valley. So, this is home, and this is our kind of ancestral homeland, you know. And so I wanted her to have some pride and to have some understanding of this is where I come from. Yeah. This is where my father's from. This is where his father's from, and his father's father, you know, and so on. And so that was the project at its root.
Right.
Right. But then it became something much bigger.
and indeed, it tends to be from El Paso to Brownsville, a very unique place. It's different from further north and further south. So it's a kind of a unique mix of what happens culturally, economically, especially artistically. There's some really cool stuff that happens. And so for this event on April 2nd that you're putting on, it kind of grew one more layer when maybe you had the idea to put music to all of this?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, you know, we had originally done a version of this. A chamber quartet in San Antonio had approached us and said, you know, can we collaborate? And I said, sure. And we tried it out. The collaboration only went so far because it was a lot more music than it was postcards.
Uh-huh.
But the music was beautiful. It just, you know, there just wasn't quite the balance. And so I sat on it for about another year, and I thought there's got to be a way of doing this that is more reflective of and echoes the border region,
yeah.
right? And so I had done a small project with singer-songwriter Carrie Rodriguez, who's based in Austin, and so we had met very, very briefly. And I reached out to her. It was the middle of COVID, and you know, in that time when people would talk to just about anyone because everybody was bored at home, they didn't have anything else to do. And she answered my email and she said, "Let's talk." And she just immediately loved the idea of this father traveling down the border, writing these postcards to his 10-year-old daughter.
A story within a story.
Yeah. And she said, "Well, let's try it out." And so she's got this wonderful series in Austin called Laboratorio that does these musical shows at the Historic Theater downtown. It's right next to the Paramount. It's called the State Theater. Mm-hmm. And they do these shows, I think, 3 or 4 times a year. And she said, "Well, we're going to do a show in about a month. Let's try this out. Let's just see how it works." And we did, and the response was immediate. It was do more of this, you know, because it was just I read, I think, maybe 3 postcards,
Mm-hmm.
and but it resonated with people almost immediately. And so then we applied for a grant. We were fortunate to get the grant, and that gave us the seed money to be able to blow this up into Carrie eventually writing original music for the production. And it's such a beautiful thing, Michael, in the sense that these postcards are obviously to my daughter, but the music is also to my daughter, and it's to me, and it's to the experience, right? So it's really, there's this conversation going between the two forms. And so, and then the other element of this is we came down to the valley and we organized this sort of family reunion for my family in the Upper Valley. And I brought in all my cousins, and we just sat them down in the kitchen, and we just started the camera rolling, and interview after interview after interview. And it was about their life growing up in the valley, their life currently, leaving the valley for points at times. You know, the objective ultimately, or I think what you get from this is the rootedness of people living in this area, how long they've been here, the families. I mean, that And that is something you don't see in that other version of the story, right? Of the border, right? You see all the chaos, you see all the mayhem, all the tragedy. You don't see the families, you don't see the connections, you don't see what is essentially, ultimately, and we're on the border, we're obviously very close to Mexico. These are American stories.
Absolutely.
They're just human stories, really. I'll take it a step further. They're just human stories. And you don't see that when we're talking about this corner of the country.
Absolutely, and anytime that the border tends to surface on the news, it does have a sensational aspect, and it's just the tiniest mote of a fraction of what life is like. And so, not only do you have the photography and the postcard vignettes that emerge from the images. You have original music that is tied to that, and then an additional layer of this kind of documentary filmmaking with the interviews for your family. So you cover a lot of cultural, historical, and artistic ground in all of this. What do you feel that strikes you as some of those layers impact the audience? What do you think they see and feel from this presentation?
Well, I'll tell you the first time we presented this, and this is such an emotional ride. It's an emotional ride for me as the artist presenting it. I mean, the first time I did this, I'll just tell you the background. I had to have these. I packed my jacket full of Kleenex because I didn't think I was going to get through it. I didn't, and I was like, okay, even if I break down, and I've got to blow my nose because I'm sobbing or whatever, how am I even going to blow my nose without the whole theater hearing me? Just because I was going through rehearsals. I had rehearsed it a million times, and we were going through the final rehearsal that afternoon, and I broke down.
Oh, it hit you.
It just tore me up. At the same time, there are moments that are just they're just very, very funny, and I think that's part of what we really wanted to capture was that there is a joy. There is, there's a part of life that down here takes some enduring, and people struggle, and that's part of the program, very much so. But there's also a joy of people laughing, people, getting together for cookouts and just living a very, very rich life, and So we didn't want to present this, when people think a show about the border, particularly, I'm talking like where we premiered it in Austin, they're thinking the border. I was like, well, that's a heavy topic, what's that going to be like? And we wanted to just take that and flip it over and just say, you don't know the border. And that's, to tell you the truth, from the moment I left Brownsville, and I grew up here, and I left in the mid '80s, and I started telling people these stories about the border, and they would look at me and was like, are you telling me the truth? Is that real? That stuff just sounds crazy. And I'd go, and it began to dawn on me that I had almost this secret, for people who had never been down here, who maybe just had passed through, but I had this secret of what life was down here like, And if I could get this on paper, if I could put this up on a stage, that, it would begin to open minds and maybe change hearts and, make a difference.
Yeah, I think that really is an effective counter to prevailing opinion. Or just notion. It's not even informed opinion of what the border is like, and I can't think of a more impactful way of doing that than telling the stories of people that are here, people that from here go off to a very large diaspora, and still maintain those connections, and I too basically am from the border, Army brat, born in El Paso.
Okay.
And now for 30 years living in Brownsville, which is my hometown now.
Yeah.
I didn't come here in the 1850s, so it was a little bit more recent than that.
Yeah.
But I've found that the diligence of the community and how there's a sense of, I don't know how communities develop their character. I don't know what that process or that force is, but the neighborliness of the community is what struck me very, very first. Great place to raise a family, massive sense of humor, and just a kind of a kindness that I really never experienced so pervasively in any other place.
I just saw this yesterday, and I don't want to suggest that it's only here, but it struck me because could be because it reminded me of an experience I had years ago when I moved back. I moved back to Brownsville for about a year, just after my first book came out. But I was just down the street at 77 and Price Road, and someone's car had broken down, and this guy that was right behind them pulled over, immediately jumped out and started pushing them. So the husband and wife were pushing, and the stranger was pushing from behind. And a similar thing had happened when I was living here, and this must have been the early 2000s. And I had this habit of, I was living on the west side of Brownsville. My parents lived on the east side of Brownsville. And what I would do is I would walk across town just because I wanted to see the neighborhoods. And you don't really see a city from a car. Mm-hmm. You don't experience the sounds and, barking dogs.
Goes by too fast.
Yeah. And so I would do that a few times a week, and I was going across, and this guy, his car had broken down. I didn't realize it was broken down, but he was just standing next to it. And he looks at me and he says, "Me das un puche?" And I was like, what's a puche? And then it's a push. Me das un puche. And it's like, oh my God, that's just beautiful. And so I helped them puche this car for about half
Puche
a block.
el carro.
Yeah, puche el carro, yeah.
Well, that's one of the other unique outgrowths of the border is the pastiche language.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and that's something also that we wanted to capture in these postcards. The fluid nature, and it's part of the beauty of growing up on the border. That you're able to shift between languages and between cultures and between classes and just all kinds of ways you have this ability. I teach at UT Austin, and we'll have kids who go to school from down there, and you're arriving with a superpower. You don't realize this, but because it's so innate to you, but you're able to do things that the rest of this population just can't do, and I think there are a ton of things that I think I took for granted growing up here that only dawned on me after the fact.
Right. Yeah. Well, as they say, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
I'm with me all day, and I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
So what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And then you go to a different environment, and then all of a sudden, wow, it's unique and special, and it enhances how I express myself.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing.
Well, and this is something that I'm preparing myself for, both emotionally, as I alluded to earlier, and just mentally, because the week before we do the show in Brownsville, we'll be performing in Maryland, at the University of Maryland, mm-hmm. in College Park. Mm-hmm. that's a completely different audience,
Completely,
obviously.
yeah.
You know, when Postcards from the Border leaves the border region, it is in large part kind of an education for much of the audience, right? It's not going to be an education in Brownsville.
But
right?
there's that incredible sense of familiarity.
I mean, yeah, it'll be holding up a mirror.
Yeah.
You know, it'll be, yes, I know that. Yes, I've stood on that same block. Yes, I get that. Yes, that's part of my history. And that, you know, I know that when I have read something, or, you know, or I know when people have come up to me and they said, I lived part of this, right? There's something so incredibly gratifying in being seen, you know. And I think, you know, personally, I would have died for a show like this when I was a kid growing up here. To see myself reflected in some manner, for my life and my culture to become the art form, right? Which is so rare, you know, for many people. But, you know, down here, we just don't get that opportunity that often.
Right. It's having that perspective of all the different elements in a presentation like this, and it's an affirmation of that existence, and it is something that, to coin a phrase, allows us to be seen in a way that is in fact affirming. And the idea of this being shown in different places, and the reactions are different for different reasons, it's all part of that sharing of those stories. Do you incorporate some of that into how you make the presentations? A difference in Maryland, say, than from Brownsville?
A little bit, you know. I mean, one of the things that you know, I can't not acknowledge, you know, when we're talking about the border, you know, it is a border. There is immigration. The story of immigration has changed in the last year, you know.
Everywhere.
You know, the show premiered the week of the inauguration. So there was the feeling that things were about to change, but we didn't know to what degree. And so, yeah, the tone has changed. I mean, for the most part, it is still the same show. I know that you know, when I did this show, I was so keyed on representing the border that I made one huge mistake.
Only one.
Only one.
That's pretty good odds.
One glaring mistake. Let me rephrase that. One glaring mistake, which was, you know, I figured, well, you know, I'm from Brownsville and I'm presenting this here, so Brownsville's represented in some way, and well, I didn't have any Brownsville cards in there. And it was like, what? How can I go to Brownsville without any Brownsville cards? That's insane. So, and I had one. I had one. I just hadn't fully developed it, and so now we've got actually what are kind of two Brownsville cards that are wonderful, that really pay homage to where I grew up and the experience here. But yeah, it's a different experience. It's a different experience. You know, for myself as an artist, I never wanted to be necessarily a tour guide. Particularly in my fiction or nonfiction, I didn't want to hold a reader's hand and take them through and explain everything. My intent was always to give them an immersive experience. The cards still very much do that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't understand that some people just are not familiar enough, and that the format or the genre of a live presentation goes by so quickly, and you're either in it and you get it or you don't get it, and so there is a little bit more attentiveness in that sense to the audience and into their experience.
And where have you made presentations? You're talking about Austin and upcoming Maryland. What other parts have you made this presentation in?
Well, here comes another form of education for me, in the sense that the theater world is just completely new to me, and I didn't realize just how long in advance everything gets planned. So we've got a show that's in the works right now. Hopefully, it's going to come together in Pittsburgh, but this is for next year. We've got some interest in Berkeley as well. So we've got potential shows out there. Nothing's been put on the books yet, but those are the ones that are pending right now.
So you're still on the cusp of larger touring presentations.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And we're also in the the Maryland show is going to be an interesting one, because we're inviting other presenters from the region, from New York and from DC, to try to preview the show,
right?
Which is how the Maryland show came around. We invited a couple of presenters, one from LA, one from Maryland, and the Maryland one, they both were interested. The LA one just didn't. It kind of fell through at the end. But it was such a I talked about my experience with the Kleenex. I'm doing this show, and it's there's a point where the music is just fills the house, and the music is just absolutely wonderful, from cumbias to polkas to it just really brings it animates the entire thing. And then there's a moment where I'm reading a postcard, and there's a little bit of underscore, but it's on me and my voice reading. And so I'm trying not to lose it as I read this. I'm just trying to get to the end of the card. Just get to the end of the card. I keep telling myself, focus, deliver it, articulate everything. But I start hearing something in the background, and it's like, what is that sound? And it's like a... And I'm hearing it from different parts of it. And people are... They're tearing up.
Yeah.
And it was the most, and it didn't happen throughout the show, but there were key moments where it just touched them. I think a lot of times, and this happened to me at the beginning of my career, where I started something that I didn't know what I was getting into, right? And part of it
that
was...
sounds like art.
Yeah. Simply ambition and a good dose of ignorance, that just, I can do that. And, I remember when I quit my job, I'm going to write a book. I had never written a book. I'd never even written a story. What was I thinking that I was going to write a book? And now I told the world, or at least my immediate world. In this case, we told the editor at Texas Monthly, we're going to go out and find we are so tired. Both of us are from the border. Joel is from El Paso. I'm from Brownsville. We are so sick and tired of hearing the national media talk about the border in this way. There is another story to the border, right? The idea that there are not just two sides of the border, physical sides. There are two narratives of the border. We're going to go out and we're going to find that other one, and we're going to bring it, and we're going to write the story of the other that the national media is. And so So we go out there, but without a specific plan. It's not like we're going to go interview, so and so, and we'll meet you at here. We're just going to go out,
See what happens.
see what happens, let it come to us, and that was really very daunting and ambitious. And for the first day, nothing really happened, and we thought, oh my God. And I remember, in fact, when we were crossing over into Juarez, there was a asylum camp, and Joel is a photojournalist by trade. He now he's more into art, but that's what he did for much of his life. So he said, "Do you think we should go down there?" And I said, "That's not our story. Remember, we're not doing that story. Somebody's doing that story. Somebody's already done it. They've done it to death. We're not doing that story." And it kept happening where we're brushing up against the other story, and we're insistent that our story is out there. So we get down to Presidio, right, out in really the middle of nowhere. There's a little dusty town, and there's not a lot going on in Presidio. So we said, let's go over to Ojinaga, and let's just see if we find a story there. And we're crossing the bridge, and I glance down into the river, and I see this Mexican father and his 3 kids cross into the river. And I look up, and I see a couple of Border Patrol agents on the bridge. One's got binoculars, the other one's got a walkie-talkie. And I go, oh my God, we cannot escape this story. It is happening right in front of us, and we're about to see an apprehension. And I can feel my heartbeat just increasing. And it's like, please don't let this happen. And they're getting into further and further into the water, and they're in the middle. And they get to the middle. The kids have these toy buckets, and they put the bucket in the water, and they pour it on their dad's head. And then he gives it to the next kid, and he pours it. And they spent the afternoon playing in the river with no intention of going to the other side. They had forgotten there was, this side and that side. It was just a family story, and the agents are keyed in. They're thinking, this is, and they're radioing people to, bring a vehicle around and what have you. After that point, it was story after story after story that just sort of, it was as though they were waiting for us. We just needed to go out and I think it absolutely made a difference that we were both, children of the border, right? That we had a certain sensitivity to those stories, to understanding them and to understanding what might be behind them, and to be able to tease out that story.
Well, don't you think that that's part of the power of the impact of presenting these stories, especially in so many different languages: music, videography, photography, spoken word, and narrative, is what you mentioned before. That's holding up a mirror to somebody's life. It gives validation. It gives such a powerful connection through just the telling of these stories. It has such power that it creates such emotional depth in the response. That's an amazing gift to do something like that.
Yeah. Well, we were very fortunate in the Austin premiere to have a handful of people from the border there, but I'm pretty sure a lot of those people who were tearing up were not from the border as well. So yeah, it is, and I think the postcards themselves have a way of just slowing time down. The music kind of raises it, and then the postcards, because it's spoken word and you're waiting for that next. You don't know where. There's always a surprise at the end of the postcard, almost invariably, and it sheds a light on. There's a postcard about going to the basilica in San Juan. There's a postcard about going out into the fields where people are working, picking melons. There's a postcard where we go to the cemetery where my grandparents are buried. There's a I won't give away the Brownsville ones, but I was going
We're just glad that there are Brownsville ones.
Yeah, that I remembered, yeah.
Well, and that's part of how life stories tend to be universal, right? There's the idea of a lineage, the pathos of how everyone that existed before us is so directly tied to us in every way imaginable. And it's funny because we intellectually understand that, right? But we don't feel it unless we're given a lens to really understand those stories. And that is, I think, the power of the presentation of things so unique but so universal at the same time.
I think, one of the things I sort of understood as a writer very early on was that, and I think it's a very natural impulse, is particularly when you're writing about an area that has been ignored, and oftentimes not just ignored, but their story misconstrued, that to almost assume a sort of a defensive position, right? And in that defensiveness, to want to point out what is different about you and what is unique about you. And I think that is a very natural thing, and it's something that, you shouldn't ignore. On the other side, I think for me personally, I've always been very interested in showing how much we're alike rather than how different we are. Because when you peel these stories away, the story that happens at the basilica, the story that happens in the cemetery, the story that happens in the river, they are family stories, and they're stories that could happen anywhere, right? In this state, in this country, in this in this world, anywhere really. And when you're able to get to that, you've reached something a lot deeper.
Fundamentally human.
Well, fundamentally human, and I think when you're telling a story and people are watching the story, right? They're not necessarily being told the story, but they're watching it unfold. What happens to us? I know it's my experience very often when I'm watching a movie or whatever, that I begin to lean into it in some way, mentally, emotionally. I begin to not only take in the narrative, but I begin to put myself in it and say, that reminds me of that time that, this didn't work out so well, or that very tender memory, or whatever it may be. And when you've done that, that for me is art, right? It's not simply, I've spoon-fed this to you, but you have actually taken it and we've found something unique together.
Yeah, and you've actually wholly participated in that moment, and the impact is total. When we do that, we suspend the reality of the moment, and we become part of the story. And see ourselves as that too. It's a really cool thing. And this is going to happen in Brownsville on April the 2nd. Folks can go to UT RGV Arts on the website and go to Show Pass and get tickets for this event, which is going to be April 2nd, starting at 7 p.m. in the TSC Performing Arts Center. And just go online to UT RGV Arts and Show Pass, and you can get tickets for the definitely broad spectrum show about life on the border, postcards from the border, also including at least one Brownsville postcard. And thank you so much, Oscar, for your story about the stories.
Yeah.
And don't be a stranger to Brownsville.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful being here. Thank you so much for having me.
This is Michael Quentz with the Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts, here to tell you about our podcast, Brownsville Matters. Everyone in Brownsville has a story to tell, and these are the stories. We broadcast these stories every Friday at 5 p.m. and every Sunday at 3 p.m. on KXIQ 105.1 FM on your radio dial. You can also catch these stories rebroadcast on our YouTube channel for Brownsville Society for the Performing Arts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and smash the notifications if you want more information about these stories that you watch and listen to.